that at any point of my presentation, if you have any questions, please just unmute and let me know. I know sometimes it's hard to hold on to your questions because you might forget them as I go. So please feel free to interrupt me. If I'm talking too fast or I'm being unclear, please also let me know. It's my honor to meet you all this morning, and I hope I can provide you some helpful information as you settle in Waterloo region. Oh, here we go again. Okay. So to tell you a bit more about myself, I am first generation, I guess, Canadian. My parents were refugees from the Vietnam War. They came to Canada in the 1980s. And I was born here. But that being said, my family is very motivated by our culture, our language, and my parents still speak often like they feel as if they're newcomers to Canada. Settling into Canada is not easy. There's so many diverse unspoken rules and cultures that exist here. So, if you have questions, if you're stuck and you don't know what to do, the best thing I can say is there's no clear answers, but there are resources out there to help you find those answers. And I also want to let you know I'm a social worker. I work with a team of lawyers. However, I am myself not a lawyer. Therefore, the information I'm going to provide you today is not legal advice. It's called legal information, just to get you started on what the basic rights are in Ontario. And yeah, I'll go through this as well. So my clinic is called Waterloo Region Community Legal Services, and it's also what's called a community legal clinic. So we are funded by Legal Aid Ontario, but we are
Sorry,
not.
Angie, I'm sorry to interrupt. We cannot see your screen if you are sharing it. Yeah,
I am. Sorry about that.
Sorry. No. I didn't know that you are sharing or not.
No, sorry. I'm having tech
No
issues
problem.
with my computer.
Okay,
today.
now we saw. Okay, if you can, make it bigger.
Okay.
Make it slide. Yeah, now we can see slide.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Sorry.
No problem.
So once again, we're funded by Legal Aid Ontario, which helps people across Ontario with many different legal matters. However, our clinic is a community one. We're just funded by them, so we don't provide all the services that Legal Aid provides. There are 76 community legal clinics across Ontario, meaning each large community has a clinic that serves them only. So for example, we serve Waterloo Region, which includes Kitchener, Waterloo, Cambridge, and all the small townships around. However, if you cross into Guelph, which isn't that far, we don't serve that area anymore. There's a clinic there that will serve the folks in that area. We're a nonprofit organization governed by a board of directors, and those board of directors members are community members as well. In Toronto alone, we have 17 specialty clinics to focus on an issue. So for example, we have a clinic in Toronto that focuses just on injuries, whereas our clinic would not be able to assist in that. Each clinic provides two basic services in areas of law, which are income support and residential tenancies, which is also housing. Today, I'm going to cover mostly about housing because it is an area of great concern in our region. A lot of people don't know their rights around renting and are being taken advantage of. And especially as newcomers, I think it's safe to assume that many of us will be renting, at least for the first while we settle in Canada. And there's a lot of rules that are being broken by landlords. So we are only protecting tenants, so people who are renting. We don't protect people who are renting out, like own property and are renting their properties. Our team is made of 7 lawyers, 3 paralegals, 2 social workers, 2 community development workers, and 3 office admin people. We offer free interpretation in any language as needed. So if at the end of this presentation, I will leave our contact information again. If you need to get in touch with us and prefer a different language, you can let our receptionist know. and she'll connect you via phone with an interpreter in any language. We only provide services to people who are low income and families who meet our financial eligibility. That being said, if you call us with a legal matter and you're not sure where to be directed next, you're welcome to call us and we'll redirect you or we'll refer you. So don't feel like you can't call us because you make too much money or you don't qualify. We're happy to refer you out. And I just want to stress again that our services are all free. We do not charge for our services. Our services exist just to support low-income community members. And that includes newcomers and international students as well. So once again, our catchment area is the cities of Kitchener, Waterloo, and Cambridge, but it also covers the townships of Woolwich, Wellesley, Wilmot, and North Dumfries. And that includes the small towns such as Elmira, St. Jacobs, and small towns around there too. Before I continue, I'm just wondering if there's any questions. Am I going too fast?
No, just I think it is good. I don't know. I'm not seeing any hand. I'm not seeing anyone, so we can go.
I do have a question. So usually you are protecting just the matters of rent and tenant, or in general issues also your nonprofit is active, like two person have a difficulty, they are, I don't know, the job problem and so on.
That's a really good question, Nissan. I will get into that shortly. We do provide other services, law services in other areas of law. Yeah, I'll get to that one. That's a very good question. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I had a small question too. So how should we know if we meet the financial eligibility thing? I mean, you said you'll usually give service to those who are low income.
Yeah. So the way that our services work is you would contact us first. There are a few ways to do that. There's an online form that you can fill out, and or you can call our clinic, and then our intake worker would take down your information. They would ask some questions about your income, and that's how they gauge whether we can provide services or not. I'm not given the numbers as of our financial threshold, but it is like moderately low because yeah, we're just supporting the more low income folks in our region.
Great, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. That's a good question. Okay, so I just wanted to explain the difference between these three areas of law. So legal information, legal support or advice, or legal representation. So legal information, oh, sorry, gosh, so many tech issues today. So legal information is basically what I'm providing today. It is just general rules about the law. It's not case specific. It's just like these are the general rules that exist. So for example, like rules around what repairs look like in a rental unit, like how responsible your landlord is to maintain your property or conduct repairs. Legal support or advice is case specific. So just for example, if I call the clinic and say like, this is what's happening to me, my landlord is evicting me, what should I do? Then it's case specific, because each matter, though it's the same eviction, might look a little different. So it's just case specific. And then legal representation is kind of like what you see in the movies, where you have a lawyer who stands beside you in a courtroom and they represent you to speak on your behalf. So today we're only providing legal information. I can't provide legal support or advice. It's case specific. So the legal areas that we provide include housing. Our main area is housing. So supporting people who are renting. We provide social assistance, which is folks on Ontario Works or Ontario Disability, people on Canadian Pension Disability. We do provide services in employment law and employment insurance. We provide some services in immigration and citizenship. debt and consumer protection, which would include stuff like unfair phone bills or internet bill disputes, that kind of thing. Name change and gender marker change for people who are wanting to change their legal name. We have an Indigenous justice program that only supports people who are identifying as Indigenous. And we do notarize and commission some documents. We also provide services in sexual harassment in the workplace and public legal education, which is free. And I'm happy to connect with anyone who is interested in that later. So we believe in what's called the three-legged stool of stability, which are 3 basic needs for any person to maintain their well-being. So I'm gonna ask my audience if anybody can guess what might be in those three legs that support the stool. Does anybody have any ideas? Please just shout them out. Ooh, there we go.
Secure.
I'm sorry.
Secure economically, if somebody is secure, it is, I believe, one of the.
Yes, that's a very good point.
Is it for general? We can say material well-being. Is it like general kind, material well-being, subjective well-being, which includes our mental health?
Sure. Yes, mental health for sure. Okay, no problem. I don't know why this slide is being silly. So how about our healthcare? Like, can somebody maintain their well-being if they feel sick? Probably not. Yeah. Okay, so it's being silly, but our 3 answers, in our opinion, is to be stable, to feel like you're well, you need 3 things, which are income, housing, so shelter over your head, your family has to have a home, and then lastly, healthcare. And these 3 things we find connect to each other all the time. Like if you're missing your health, but you have lots of money, but your health is poor, then you're not going to feel stable. You're not going to feel safe. And the same, like you can have money in the bank account, but if you don't have stable housing, or you're at risk of losing your home because of a bad landlord, then of course you don't feel well, you don't feel stable either. So our services exist hopefully so that we can maintain this stool of well-being and keep everybody feeling good. Our main area of law is housing law. So 3 terms I want to explain are landlord, tenant, and eviction. So a landlord is someone who owns property and is renting their property out to you for a charge. A tenant is someone who is renting the property. And an eviction is essentially when landlord, kicks their tenant out and says you have to leave. The law around housing in Ontario is called the Residential Tenancies Act. You might hear the law, you might hear this term, which is Residential Tenancies Act, but they're the same. I'm going to introduce you very briefly to the Landlord and Tenant Board, which is the court that deals with only housing matters. So you see in movies, like everything goes to court, but here in Ontario, if you have a housing matter, if you get into a dispute with your landlord, it would be taken to this smaller court called Landlord and Tenant Board. So it's less scary. There's no judge, but yeah, they just handle those matters. Introducing you to arrears, which means when people are behind on rent. Evictions notices, which is if a landlord wants to evict or kick out their tenant, there's many steps that they have to take. They can't just text you and say, I need you out by 30 days. They can't call you and say, hey, I need you to leave. I'm selling the property for profit. They have to fill out a form. It has to be specific. For example, if the reason is because they're trying to sell the property to, sell to somebody else and make profit, that's called an N12. And I'll explain a little bit more about that. But again, they can't just write you a sticky note or something and say, I need you to leave. That's totally illegal. Even after they send you this evictions notice, you can disagree, you can find help. You don't have to leave. Don't feel like you have to leave because your landlord has given you this notice. If you want to stay, you can also take them to the landlord and tenant board, which is basically this court, and explain why, like, it's not possible for you to leave, what can be done. Like sometimes the landlord can owe you a lot of money in order for you to leave, and that's something that we can help mediate as well. But again, just when you get an evictions notice, don't feel the need to leave right away. You have a lot of rights. And I just want to stress that, because a lot of people who are new here come and think that the landlord has all the power and the landlord knows the rules and the landlord knows best. This is very untrue. So again, just stressing that it's important to know your rights and enforce them too. We're going to talk a little bit about repairs and maintenance. If you're renting a property, your landlord is responsible for the upkeep of your apartment or your rental unit. It has to be in good living condition. We're going to talk a little bit about unlawful entry, which means if you're renting a property, your landlord cannot show up anytime they want at your door and say, "Hi, I'd like to come in." There are a lot of rules around that as well. And we're going to talk a little bit about illegal increase of rent. So the Ontario law says that every year there's what's called a guideline to rent increase. And that means each year, your landlord can only increase according to the guideline. So for example, during the pandemic, when it was worse, in 2020, the rent increase rate was 0%. So that year, landlords were not allowed to increase their rent. In 2021, the rent increase was 1.2%. And this year, in 2023, it's 2.5%. So again, anything above that increase is illegal and or up for dispute. But that is the rule. And again, like a lot of newcomers come, they don't know, and they think that, you know, I'm paying $600 this year, but next year my landlord wants me to pay $2,000 and I have to pay it, or I have to move. So that's very untrue. There is a guideline they have to follow. And I just want to stress again that my legal clinic only represents tenants. We do not represent landlords. Seville, how am I doing for time? Sorry.
It is wonderful. Yeah, you're doing perfect. Yeah,
Okay.
don't worry about time. We are all here for you. So,
Thanks. I don't want to take anyone's time.
no worries.
Thanks. So things to expect if you're renting. So, oh, sorry. I should leave room for questions.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Many landlords doesn't want to sign agreement because they say that they don't want to be in tax, CRA, and this kind of stuff. So what tenant should do? They don't want to sign anything.
I would contact our clinic, Son, and my team would be able to guide you a little better on that. It sounds like that landlord is very unaware of the law and maybe not operating quite legally. So maybe that's something that we can just help like advocate for. Just give them a call and say, hey, like you need to have an agreement. It has to be lawful, and hopefully just kind of maintain that relationship, because everyone wants to know that they have a legal tenancy and that they're safe. Is that okay? So things you can expect if you rent. Sorry, go ahead.
Thank you.
Things you can expect if you're renting here. Your landlord can legally do a credit check and or ask for a key deposit. However, I just want to stress that we know that the credit check is a problem for newcomers, because the landlord is looking for credit checks for people who have been in Canada, and newcomers wouldn't have any credit in Canada. So we realize that this is a barrier for people trying to rent first time, especially in Canada. And as for the key deposit, it has to be a reasonable amount. So if you start your tenancy and your landlord asks for like $2,000 for a key deposit, that's very unreasonable. Please contact us. And again, we can hopefully mediate that. The amount should be equal to what it would cost to replace a lock, say if you lost a key. So if I lost my apartment key, it might cost my landlord $200 to change the locks, give me a new key. So they shouldn't be charging me $2,000 for a key deposit. It should be reasonable. And as a tenant, if you want to end your tenancy, you have to give your landlord 60 days notice. So if today on April 29th, I'd like to leave my apartment for whatever reason, moving to a different country, or I just want to move, I have to give my landlord notice and say like at least June 29th to give them 60 days to find a new tenant. If you get evicted, your landlord has to go through the proper channels, meaning that they have to fill out the forms properly, give them to you, give you enough time to move, as the law says, and then only a sheriff, which is a special police officer, can remove your belongings. Your landlord cannot come into your unit. They can't take your things. They can't move on your behalf. If they do, I recommend you call the police or call us and let us know. We will try our best to support. I'm going to do a pop quiz because I find it's an easier way to learn. Please feel free to shout out answers or put them in the chat. I'd love to hear your ideas. So the first one, true or false, your landlord can evict you for having a pet.
And you can ask a question now that this question also came up. So, okay, like, right, for example, you said that there is a time, like, period that they have to give like 60 days to give like a notice, like 60 days in advance. What about if in the agreement it was written something else, for example? Or this one, for example, the landlord can evict you for having a pet. What about if they write this in the agreement? Does it change the whole rule?
Yeah, it would change the rule. That's why it's this information is very broad. Depending on the reason for the eviction, it changes the amount of time that the landlord has to give you in order to evict you, for example. But the rule generally for tenants, if they want to leave a unit, is 60 days notice to their landlord.
Okay.
But yeah, it does change depending on your lease or your agreement and or the reason of eviction.
Okay, so if it was not written in the agreement, it's going to go according to Ontario guide, for example, which is 60 days, right? But if it was written in the agreement, it changed the whole scenario.
It does, yes. But even then, right now we're aware that the rental market is really, really high. So a lot of people, even though they know that it's time for them to leave, they can't find a new home. And what is the alternative to, like, it's not safe to go and like live in a hotel for a long time or live on the street. So it's actually okay for you to stay in your unit and seek help from there, because we don't want anybody to lose their homes, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah. So the police can't come, like, I think this is a fear, so I'm just gonna say it very plainly, is some people think like, oh, I was supposed to leave by November 4th. And they think that if they don't move on November 4th, the police are going to come. And often landlords will say, like, I'll call the police. The police actually can't move you. Only the sheriff, which is a special police officer, can. And so, like, don't feel threatened by that. What you can do is like seek legal support from us, for example, or legal support elsewhere. And we can help mediate the situation. And hopefully, worst case scenario is buy you time to find a new place.
Okay, and getting sheriff involved in the process of eviction, it is not a straightforward, right? It should have a process. So if a landlord is, threatening the tenant to have a police or sheriff, it's not straightforward to bring the sheriff and then remove you, right? It requires some process.
Right. So the general process is like after, say the eviction notice has passed, it's gone through the landlord and tenant board, and the chair, which is like the judge, has said that yes, you need to move by, just give a random date, November 4th. The decision has legally been made. So by November 4th, in that scenario, you would have to move. If you don't, then the sheriff will come and move your belongings and change your locks. Yeah, so it is very specific on the case. So I can't give like an exact answer, but
absolutely. No, we got it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and the sheriff is basically just a specific police officer, and that's just their job to do like the last minute change the locks, move you out if needed.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, so the answer for this question.
Does anybody have a guess?
Depends on the agreement.
Okay.
American everything for him. Yeah, if it was pet friendly or not, I think it depends on. I have no idea.
No problem. There's no wrong answers. This quiz is just meant to give you information in a more interactive way and get you thinking. So the answer is actually false. According to the law, a landlord can actually not stop you from having a pet. And if you do have a pet, they cannot say that therefore you can't rent. That's actually against your rights. So often when we rent, we see ads online. It'll say like no pets allowed or pets allowed. But actually the law says that you're allowed pets. And the landlord doesn't actually have to know whether you have pets or not. Again, many people don't know this. They think that they have to follow the rules written by the landlord, but the law actually says you can have pets. That being said, there are also a few exceptions. One being it has to be a safe animal. So, for example, if people, some people have pet snakes, like poisonous snakes, for example, a landlord or any other tenant in the building can say like, no, that's not safe. You can't rent this place because you have a poisonous snake. Another reason can be safety. So if you have a dog or a cat, but you're not cleaning up after it and there's dog poo everywhere, you know, then that becomes a safety concern, a health concern, and therefore the landlord can talk to you and or it can lead to eviction. So again, the general rule is you can have pets regardless of what your landlord says. However, it still has a few exceptions, which is like safety, health, and of course, like a safe creature, not an illegal pet. Also, you'd be surprised. We actually get illegal animals sometimes.
Interesting. So is it true to say that landlords do not have the right to even write about anything regarding pets in the agreement because so many buildings are not pet friendly?
So they can write it in if they'd like to, but they have no right to control whether you have a pet. So for example, not to be tricky, but so say I have a dog and my landlord has said no pets. And I really want this apartment. But if I tell them I have a dog, they might say no to me. What I can do is, because I know the law, they can't stop me, and say like I won't talk about having a dog at all. I move in and then a week later I bring my dog in after. They actually can't stop me because yeah, that's in the law. They can get mad and say like you didn't tell me about your dog, but I don't actually have to tell them.
Interesting, very interesting.
Like I don't have any pets, but I wouldn't give up my dog. So,
Oh no.
if I had one.
Oh, nice. Great.
Okay, so my next question, it is illegal to evict someone in the winter. Is this true or false? So I don't know how long everybody has been in Canada, but we had a really warm winter this year. Fortunately. But many other winters we've had negative 45 degrees. Like I would step outside and have frozen eyelashes. So this is a question we often get asked is like, is it legal